changes. Just remember I lived. If I could have shown you all the love I had within, then I could have claimed you as a friend. But as it is, do not lament. Dust reclaimed, energy spent. I look through the windows then, I am the glass now. Try and use what went before to see through the grass somehow. Were I able, I would have, I could have, I should have. But as it is, do not lament. Dust reclaimed, energy spent. In many ways, we're both the same, whatever we have to give. When you get stuck on why I came, just remember I lived. And as it is, do not lament. Dust reclaimed, energy spent. Jesse Dillon at 15. Chapter 25. By ninth grade, Jesse was thought of more as a bit of a juvenile delinquent and a creep than any sort of nerd or what have you. One of the nerdy kids, in fact, would repeatedly tell him, "You're warped." He kind of liked it. Jesse was definitely growing to appreciate that kind of attention. If everyone just tested him, if he was ugly and skinny and unlikable and had no friends, at least he could shock and surprise. One day, one of his classmates was going around the class, telling kids what he thought they'd be when they grew up. Looking back, Jesse would wonder if that boy was gay. No one back then ever said they were gay. Anyway, the boy was walking around and came to Jesse. You know those guys that drive around in cars and smash into each other? I think you'll be one of them. Jesse's class had the same math teacher in ninth grade as they had in eighth. He was a nerd and a math geek. He had big glasses and was overweight. He was popular with the other students who didn't pursue it in the immature way some of the women teachers had in middle school. Jesse went through an entire semester without doing any of his math homework. At the end of the semester, he took his book home and did all of it. He stapled it together and left it on top of the teacher's inbox. After class, a couple of the usual girls were schmoozing with the teacher. He found the homework and told them about it, and theatrically dropped it in the trash can. They could not wait to tell Jesse. But Jesse did a very good job of pretending not to care, which of course pissed them off. One evening, Jesse was watching Michael while his parents were out, and they started playing with a little hollow plastic ball. The ball hit a window pane in the back door and broke it. They had been warned about playing ball in the house. Jesse was so upset that he literally threw himself to the floor, face down, and broke his nose. But physical pain could never make him cry. He'd been through enough of the worst kind, so no one would ever know. When his father got home, he told Jesse that Jesse was too old to spank. So his little brother got that. That was the ultimate guilt and just added to the humiliation. It was in ninth grade also that Jesse had another bad experience that would mark his psyche for a long time. He was playing basketball in gym and grabbed a rebound around one of the black kids. The kid was very poor, very skinny and weak, and the other black kids had made fun of him constantly. They called him Hedgehog because of his afro. "Sucker," Jesse said good-naturedly. "What? You called me fucker?" "I didn't call you fucker." The kid was really angry looking, and he could see the fear in Jesse's eyes. Jesse was afraid of black kids in general at this point in his life. The other boy ran up to him and grabbed him. Jesse wasn't fighting back at all. They tumbled to the ground, and Jesse tried to get loose. "You tore my shirt!" The other boy flew into a rage. Jesse hadn't got up yet, and the boy started to kick him. Jesse covered up as the boy kicked him in the head repeatedly. Danny was one of Jesse's classmates. Danny was everything Jesse was not. Good-looking, athletic-looking, athletic on all the ball teams, well-liked by the boys, the girls, the teachers, a good student, and just an all-around good guy. He was also everything Jesse wanted to be. He was cute, and he was cool, he had great hair and a girlfriend, and Danny was pretty much good at everything. Danny came over and tried to stop it. "He tore my shirt!" "Well, make him pay for it then." After a while, the boy stopped his rampage. The bell rang and everyone headed for class. Jesse couldn't head to class. He was completely shaken. He walked around the gym. He walked outside. His head hurt. After half an hour, he realized he had nowhere to go. Like everything else, he had no idea what to do. He walked to math class, right in the middle of the class period. The teacher said nothing. One of the girls looked at him with pity. It was all just too much. Jesse's temples were swollen and hurt for weeks. He worried that he had been injured seriously. He remembered his mother saying when he was younger that getting hit in the temple could kill a person. One day after school, Blaine was over at his house and started talking about it. Danny told him to make you pay for the shirt. They decided to give Danny a call. So Blaine called and threatened Danny, the boy who had actually tried to help. Jesse would also remember this with guilt and shame. At the time, it didn't seem like Danny was trying to help, just another enemy throwing fuel on the fire. Jesse just didn't get it. That black kid would continue to harass Jesse somewhat the rest of the year, but the only real incident of note was when he threw a torn soft drink can down the stairs at Jesse, cutting his lip on the jagged edge. Jesse and Blaine used to sneak out at night after their parents had gone to bed. Jesse still had his 3-speed bicycle that he had got in Rockland. He liked it because he could sit on it and kind of walk and cruise it. One night, he was halfway over to Blaine's and rain started coming down in buckets. He walked the little bike up under a big weeping willow. Jesse had read in Sports Illustrated about New England's tight end, Russ Francis. Russ was part Hawaiian and talked about how he used kahuna to envision himself catching the football. If you could envision something, you could make it happen. Jesse fully believed this. Now, under the tree, he got a good mental photograph of the rain falling against the black sky. He closed his eyes and kept that picture. Then he changed the mental image to the same setting, everything there, only with the rain gone. He opened his eyes. Everything looked the same as it had with his eyes shut. The rain had stopped immediately and entirely. Another time, they had arranged at school for Jesse to go over to Blaine's house and knock on his window. Blaine would be ready and waiting. As soon as Jesse knocked on the window, a light came on in another room. He ran to the bushes. The garage door opened and Blaine's father looked out. Jesse ran and his father chased him in his car. The next day, Blaine's mother would call Jesse's house and tell his parents that Jesse had been sneaking around their house the night before. Blaine's father had chased him, and he knew it was Jesse. She said that they kept their garage door open and everyone knew it, so they had to watch out for people trying to break in. And when his father had gotten back home, Blaine was asleep. Blaine was now forbidden to be friends with Jesse. Blaine had pretended to be asleep and stuck by his story. Jesse called Blaine's mom to tell her the truth. Jesse, of course, was an idiot. Obviously, she didn't listen. In the end, they couldn't be friends anymore. So Jesse had no friends. People had lied about Jesse before, and they would lie about him again. And rare was the time that anyone would believe him. He eventually learned not to bother protesting, let alone protesting too much. But you couldn't blame Blaine. He was afraid of his abusive father. It was then that Jesse discovered the Beatles. Without any friends, he would sit up in his room at home with the door shut and listen to records for hours on end, blocking out the world. It was his haven, at least for the hours he was out from the prison of school. 15. I'd sit up in my room all day. It was just me alone. The Beatles records I'd play. 15. I'd sit up in my room all day. It was such a lonely time, but not a time I'd trade. They're lonely boys and they always will. They were lonely then and they're lonely still, but they couldn't be much lonelier than me. 15. I'd sit up in my room all all day. It was just me alone, along with the Beatles. I'd play 15. I'd sit up in my room all day. 15. I'd sit up in my room all day. Jesse Dillon. One bright sunny day in the summer after ninth grade, Jesse was getting his hair cut. There was piped in music in the little shop. He heard Nights in White Satin by the Moody Blues for the first time. Jesse would never be the same. He bought the album and played the record over and over that summer. That Christmas he got This Is the Moody Blues, and they became his new favorites. The Moody Blues put him in touch with his romantic side, his poetic side, his real heart. Later, as he looked back, Jesse thought the music of the Moody Blues might have saved his life. That year, he also started getting into The Doors and Neil Young. The insanity of Jim Morrison and Neil Young fit nicely with what Jesse had become. Also during that time, Jesse made a friend. Trey was another outsider. He was quiet and unassuming. His parents were elderly. His older brothers had long since left home, leaving Trey to fend for himself with his strange parents. Trey felt insane at times. Trey called his elderly parents the bitch and the bastard. He was 15 years younger than his youngest older brother, and he often said he was an accident. Jesse would try to argue about it, but Trey knew the truth. His father was a big truck mechanic with really thick glasses and no interpersonal skills. He seemed totally unapproachable. His mom was a short old woman you could picture as eternally in curlers. She'd sit all day in the kitchen with greasy dishes in the sink, watching a small portable black and white TV. She had kind of a shrill voice, but was nice enough. She talked silly enough that she should have kept her mouth shut, but didn't do that often. She would say things like, "That nice nigger feller at the store." Probably lonely. She wondered how she ended up old with Trey. She cared about him, but she didn't really have the energy. Trey was very nerdy in a way, but got bad grades. Jesse was pretty much his only friend. When talking about previous friends, he'd say that he grew and moved on and they didn't. He loathed how he was and was always about self-improvement. Trey spent a lot of time in his room with the door shut. He liked 60s music, wrote odd poetry, and would burn what he didn't like from time to time, literally. He actually taught himself to sing when he was 17 by screaming into a pillow. Trey and Jesse hung out the rest of that year and through the end of high school. At the beginning of the first semester, Jesse had a typing class. He was failing it badly. He started cutting class, going instead to the library where Blaine and a couple of other kids from their class were working. The four of them would sit around and play hearts, all period. That was one of the best times Jesse ever had in school. He got pretty good at it. He loved to run the table. There would be another occasion for hearts in his future, and it too would be among his fondest memories. Jesse got his midterm grade in typing. It was 14%. He went to the counselor to attempt to drop the class. The counselor saw he was in the advanced class and let him drop it with no questions asked. Jesse was grateful, but he didn't think it was fair to the other kids who were not in the advanced program. Jesse would ride his bike everywhere. He even rode across the interstate, across the Cumberland Bridge. He and Trey spent a lot of time together riding bikes, listening to music and talking. Jesse also played guitar and wrote a lot of lyrics. He and Trey would read each other's poetry. Prayer. With magic that warms me inside, won't you color the autumn sky? Winter gray cold in which I can hide, and joyful spring winds for making me high. With the blue of her eyes, won't you paint the noon skies? Won't you color the evening the color of sighs? Won't you brush on the trees the brightest of green? Won't you paint on the breeze the joy I've seen? With burning flame, won't you light the sunrise, the sunset the same as the sun dies? And on the water, won't you give me her face, reflecting her beauty when she comes to that place? But on the mountains get my love back to me. If she goes out to them, it's all that she'll see. Jesse Dillon at 16. And Jesse was definitely getting a lot crazier. One day, as they rode by the mental hospital, Jesse saw a bunch of children and he felt sorry for them. Let's rescue them. Trey seemed quite upset about this. He thought Jesse would actually do it. When Jesse turned 16, he got his driver's license on his third attempt. He quickly found the top speed of his parents' car. The old Buick could go 108 flat out. That wouldn't sound so fast later, or seem so fast. Jesse would often go out alone at night. One night he rode his bike through the nearby town of Breckenridge in the moonlight. Another night, Jesse walked over to a park near his house, climbed on top of the roof of the pavilion, and played guitar under the stars. He was starting to come into his own some. At the end of 10th grade, Jesse's class found out that the advanced program was to be moved back to another school. Again, the question, did Jesse want to go? He had already decided that he would graduate that next year. All he had to do was to take junior and senior English at the same time. He would escape. If he stayed with it, he would graduate advanced. He might as well get that after all these years of crap and extra work. Besides, he could run from some of his problems that way. Randall was a nice-looking brick school, but without a whole lot of windows. It was built in the late 60s at a time when the school system had lots of money and wanted to build a good school for the best part of town. The year after Jesse graduated, there was a long article in the local paper about Randall titled, "Still the Best and the Brightest." Many times state soccer champs and basketball champs, they also scored the highest numbers on all the academic measures. The kids that went there were well-off kids, but they weren't rich snobs. 3 years before, Jesse had ridden the shuttle bus to the advanced program middle school from Randall, and that was where he'd gotten into a couple of fights. Jesse fit in better at the new school. Most of his classes were outside the advanced program. He liked the kids there. He never should have gone into the advanced program anyway. Should have learned that from his time in Rockland. But he didn't know. He just knew to run. He started working at a McDonald's. It was a somewhat military and humbling environment. He wasn't good at the job. He knew it, and they knew it. Besides, he had to wear an embarrassing polyester uniform and a hat that kept his hair out of his face, or he wanted it. This would be the first of a long stream of jobs he would fail in. One cold January day, he was cutting school with his old friend Blaine. Before Blaine, Jesse couldn't really imagine stealing on purpose, but he had come not to care about anything. Blaine, on the other hand, had worked hard and made his own money since he was very young. He thought he was entitled to things he would steal. Jesse would have a harder time blaming Blaine than blaming himself. They went into GES the morning of a school day with the intent of stealing record albums. They carefully went through the albums for 45 minutes, accumulating more than a dozen they wanted. Jesse then grabbed them all and walked out the back door. Didn't even bother putting them under his coat. Blaine was still in the store with the keys to his car. A security person who had watched the whole thing followed him out. Jesse got to the car and waited. He was taken back inside and his mother was called. Of all the terrible things that he had ever done or had ever happened to him, thinking about his father getting home that time was the worst. Jesse pleaded with his mother not to tell his father. His father was totally calm, didn't yell at him, didn't hit him, but he pretty much said, "You're a thief." That was pretty much it. Thief was his identity. He was grounded for the rest of the school year and had to quit his job. The grounding? It didn't matter. And his father pretty much said that he assumed Jesse didn't care about quitting the job. He was a thief and he was lazy. His father had always thought Jesse was lazy and had always accused him of it. It was already part of his identity also. At this point, Jesse had actually a couple of friends at his new school. One of his friends was Rob. Rob was a senior. He had a cute little 10th grade girlfriend. He was funny and he drove a Mustang Grande. One time, Rob told Jesse he got caught switching prices on speakers for his car. The police were called and he was in trouble with his father. Jesse didn't tell Rob that he had also been caught stealing. It was humiliating, and he didn't want to tell anyone that he was a thief. He told people he was grounded for 5 months, but he didn't tell them why. They just said he deserved it. They didn't believe he could deserve it, but he thought he did, and he told them so. One of Jesse's favorite memories from this time was when Rob asked him if he wanted to go up to Mystic Ridge in Cloud Canyon and smoke a joint. He didn't know what or where that was, but sure, it sounded a lot more fun than class. Rob, like most of the other seniors, only had class till noon. Cloud Canyon was incredible. Jesse had no idea that a place like that existed in Nashville. All snaky roads, no houses, no buildings, no cars. A huge dam, streams, woods, hills, and the view from the mountain was so cool. Jesse smoked the pot, but he didn't know to inhale. His first experience with pot was fun, but obviously had no effect. Jesse had a blast in the one senior class he had. Rob and some other cool and somewhat free-spirited kids were in the class with him. Jesse drew racist pictures of Jimi Hendrix, Jaume, and they all wrote names of bands on their notebooks. His usual, the Beatles, the Moody Blues, Neil Young, the Guess Who. Rob and his friend Ed liked ELP. Lindsay liked all of them. Lindsay was a cute girl with long, soft hair, blue eyes and glasses, and a quick smile. She was short and fun and quick to laugh, but Lindsay was the boss somehow. She had a kind of hippie integrity. If Lindsay said it was okay, then it was. Jesse was one of Lindsay's favorite people in high school, but he had no idea. She had moved from Virginia at the beginning of high school, and it was a rough and tough transition. Lindsay also had a troubled home life. To Jesse, she was cool and well-adjusted. If Lindsay and Rob thought Jesse was okay, well, maybe he wasn't that bad. Rob's friend Ed was kind of short and wore glasses. He was Rob's sidekick, but even more straight-laced. He was nice, but wasn't quite sure about Jesse. Really, he wasn't quite sure about any of them but Rob. He also had a cute little 10th grade girlfriend who happened to be Rob's girlfriend's best friend. Jesse had a crush on a girl named Diana. She sat behind him in class. Diana had moved from Wisconsin at the beginning of her senior year. She was self-assured but probably a little self-conscious over her size. Like Jesse, she mostly wore a jacket in class. Diana wasn't like the others. Jesse pretty much brought her into the fold. He didn't join in the she didn't join in the discussions of all the cool music. She was more of a Van Halen type, but she did laugh at some of their antics and drawings. During the year, she found a boyfriend who had gone, or who was going, to Jesse's old school. She asked Jesse if he knew him. Jesse knew him from playing basketball at the apartments near his house, the same ones where he beat up and held down his classmate from Wardale. Jesse was kind of jealous. Diana didn't talk much, but wasn't afraid to take up for herself. When she got sick of Jesse talking about her boyfriend being a sophomore, she said, "He looks a lot more like a senior than you do." Her boyfriend was a lot bigger than Jesse, even though he was a little younger. Lindsay also let him know that he should just get off the subject, whether or not those words were spoken. Alyssa was a pretty girl who wore a fake fur jacket. She was also more or less part of Jesse's group. He never saw her talk to anyone else. She was sick a lot, and it seemed to Jesse that she had a sickly kind of breath. Even when she was in class, she didn't quite seem to be there. Her interests seemed to lie elsewhere. Rob had a thing for a girl in the class, totally straight-laced, pretty, preppy but nice. One day, Rob spent all day, all class, drawing something in his notebook. Finally, when class was over, he showed it to Jesse. It was an enormous, 4-foot-tall pile of what looked like round crackers. The caption said, "Everything tastes better when it sits on a Ritz." On the crackers was a very accurate rendition of the pretty girl, completely naked. The face, well, and the body also were perfect. They made a lot of fun of their teacher. She was very nice but very ditzy. Maybe about fifth, maybe about 50, but fairly stylish. But she wore those boots. Jessie started calling her Bungalow Boots, probably after the Beatles song Hey Bungalow Bill. She was involved with the drill corps or some other club. One day she brought in a couple dozen cases of fundraising M&Ms. It wasn't long afterward that Jesse walked out with a case and started selling them out of his locker. A couple weeks later, he and Blaine drove over to Moordale and sold them in the hall there. Jesse saw his old math teacher, who was surprisingly friendly to him. Apparently, he had come down with ALS or some other serious disorder and maybe mellowed out. Just before the dawn, wouldn't it be romantic to cry for a beautiful girl? Wouldn't it be like a fairy tale to save her from her sorrow? You'd surely take the risk, knowing no one failed to fall. And anyone killed in fantasy is a person better off, for once a goal is reached, the wanting's always lost. To not survive a dream alive, a sky that's not yet blue, one morning silver lawn, a dream that will come true. As those just before the dawn, when gods reveal to mortals' eyes what life's to now concealed from others not so wise. Jesse Dillon, at 17. Another class Jesse liked was chemistry. He had a friend in front of him and a friend behind him. The guy in front was one of the coolest guys he had known in school, but they had a fun time cutting up in class and being punished by having to copy whole chapters. The girl behind him was cute as a button, and they had fun too. He even liked the teacher. One time he was cutting class and saw the teacher heading through a bank drive-through 5 miles away from the school. Ben Goldman sat next to him in that class. He had long black curls and glasses. Ben had been the class clown. Ben had been the class clown in Jesse's 6th grade class. He had made fun of Jesse many times, and he had been Carrie's boyfriend. He was the shug. Now he was quiet, kept to himself completely in the chemistry class. One day he looked over at Jesse's sick and racist sketch. Interesting, but biologically impossible. He was still funny, and maybe didn't judge Jesse so much now. Jesse had one advanced class that year. Even in that class, there was a girl he could talk to. Of course, she was an outcast also. One day after getting called down yet again, the teacher asked him how he would like to go out in the hall. How would you like a yard job? I live in an apartment. Then I'll use a jackhammer. That would be something. A jackass with a jackhammer. He was out in the hall. The other advanced class kids thought what they usually did, but it was way worth it. Jesse had a strange, warm, and sickening feeling at home sometimes. It reminded him of being in pajamas while the sun was still up. His home with his family did not feel like what he would later long for as home. His mother, though, had a favorite Christmas album the last few years he was there. The singer's name was Evie Tornquist, but she just went by Evie. She was so cute and sweet. Her voice was also sweet. She seemed to Jesse like she must be such a good person. And there were songs on there that would always make him think of Christmas, of what it was really about. They seemed so holy. Jesse thought that there must be a different aspect of Christianity, one that most people miss. Christmas, especially Christmas Eve, always felt especially holy to Jesse. That was something that would never change. We just disagree. They say those closest vaporize, skipping the liquid stage, though never told by living eyes, mainly by those who wage the war of which none will survive, and never found bodies of those once alive. The cloud that lit up Frisco arrived another day. They found 1,000,000 missing as it rained upon L.A. Glowing bodies, fireflies in the night, charred and blackened corpses, cold by morning light. The telly says they can't do us no harm. A little girl runs, carrying her arm. A soldier retreats, running on stubs. A mother stealing food is beaten with clubs. A reactionary radical calling for peace is jailed for calling the morale to decrease. Newspapers tell us the president said that we're still winning with 10 million dead. The station was bombed, so there's no more news. Last thing they said, we've got nothing to lose. The sky is now painted with orange and red hues. The way that you die is the last thing to choose. The war is all over, the few that survive wait for the dark cloud of dust to arrive. As epitaph for a creature who never could see, I'll write on the mountain that we just disagree. Jesse Dillon at 17. Armageddon, elusive, inescapable. She wakes up and it's a new day. She walks down to the lake and smiles to the gray. Innocent, all-knowing pipes play on the faraway wind. Dawn's embrace shines on her face. Melancholy shadows foreshadow the end. Loving, alone, by the edge of the bay, she'll run and pretend, but none watch her play. Faithful, eager, the hope of a new life, she watches the sun go down. She thinks of the man with the gun and the knife that she saw yesterday. She wonders at the world and then silently prays. Calm and separate, she sinks into night. Tanks and guns and bombs and death found in cool starlight. How did the grass grow in the shade by the brook? And how did the birds fly that I saw in the book? Could you tell me, Daddy, how did they look? And what was night and what was day? And my long ago sister that the war took away? The legacy of a million years, silent, empty streets, blurred by the young girl's tears coming down in sheets. The last vestige of man's quest to create something lasting dies like the rest, only in death everlasting. Death at long last comes with the rains, sent from above to wash out the stains. Trafalgar and Angio, Normandy and Shiloh, like the rest, fall dead on the sweeping, sleeping days of Armageddon. Jesse Dillon at 17. Chapter 26. Jesse graduated from high school in early May. His father got him a job filing policies at the insurance company where he worked. That was not a very good idea, but seemed to work out okay at first. Jesse really liked the two young black ladies he worked with, and they seemed to like him too. They could see that he was not the usual boss's kid. Jesse had fully escaped his prison. He had friends and a job. He just needed a girl to love, a girl who would love him. And he had other dreams and felt that one day he would be someone else. He would rise above his past. And when he would get there, Jesse wished that no one would ever know he had been the person he had been before. He wished that no one would ever be able to tie back his name to his old shame. He wrote a song about running away from his name. Watch me run. Out of the gray the sun will rise, and watch me run away from my name. I'm looking to find the love in your eyes. Never believing it's always the same. Watch me run away from my name. Around me gather memories that came. How can they all say it's a game? Watch me run away from my name. I'll find among the stars a star I can call my own. Away from sleepy girls and tired bars, I'll recognize what I'd always known. Realize the trip you are on. Hear the call of the morning skies. Echo the cries of the promise of dawn. Mirrored in the love in your eyes. Watch me run away from my name. Around me gather memories that came. How can they all say it's a game? Watch me run away from name. Out of the gray the sun will rise, and watch me run away from my name. I'm looking to find love in your eyes, never believing it's always the same. Watch me run away from my name. Around me gather memories that came. How can they all say it's a game? Watch me run away from my name. Jesse Dillon at 18. After a while, a clerical job opened up in another department, and he was moved over there. Preferential treatment, but they also knew that he was smart. Unfortunately, though, the work was quite boring, and he could not consistently do something like that. The filing was more of a kind of boring he could handle. No one seemed to know, but he wasn't really doing his job. Not much, at least. Bills would come in again and again since he was sending them through late. He would end up paying them again. There probably had never been so many refunded overpayment checks in the history of the company. Eventually, a new supervisor came in and found out. She never told anyone, but she knew, and he knew that she knew. Another miserable job experience, another failure. And right there where his father's livelihood and reputation were on the line. The following summer, while playing basketball at his friend Bill's house, Jesse met a guy named Rick. Rick would later become his best and oldest friend, and somewhat later, Jesse met a girl named Jan who lived next door to Bill. Jan was 5 years older than Jesse. She was a sweet girl who lived at home. Before Jesse came along, she would stay home all day. 3 years out of high school, and she wasn't going to college, and she had no job. Her family didn't seem to respect her. There seemed to be issues with her stepfather. Jan had her stepfather's last name, but there was no relationship there. He kept the house cold to save money, and she stayed under the covers and read all day. Jesse always felt that he even brought her more shame around her family. He thought they considered him some loser she brought home. It was also at this time that Jesse took all of his money and bought a used Jeep CJ7. He asked a claims adjuster at his work to check it out. When the adjuster found out who was selling it, he told Jesse not to buy it. The guy was bad news. But Jesse wanted it badly, so he agreed to look at it. He told Jesse definitely don't buy it. It had been wrecked and rebuilt. Jesse got a second opinion from the husband of his father's secretary, a man who raced cars. He said it was fine for the money, so Jesse bought it anyway, without telling his parents. Jesse drove the Jeep over to Bill's house. When he came back out, it wouldn't start. He left it there for several days, but eventually realized it just needed a new battery. About that time, his father said, "Let's see this Jeep." Obviously, his secretary had told him about it, in spite of her promises to Jesse. Jesse and Bill and Rick and Jan started going out together almost every night. Jesse had a crush on Jan. It seemed all the guys in their group did, but eventually Jesse and Jan started dating. She liked him because he was different. He would wear corduroys, a 3/4 length sleeve baseball shirt, and sneakers every day. She called that combination his uniform. Jesse had never kissed a girl, 18 and never been kissed. Didn't know how. After the first time or two, Jan said, "You're a strong kisser. Has anyone ever told you that?" Fact is, he was a terrible kisser. There really wasn't anything he couldn't screw up. One day, after they had been dating for a couple months, Jesse went by his house to get something. He left Jan out in his Jeep. His mother insisted he bring her in to meet his father. Within 5 minutes, they were walking back out the door. "Your father is an asshole." It wasn't like Jan to cuss. Jan got Jesse into a western bar called the Whiskey one night. She gave the bouncer her ID and then told him that Jesse was with her. Yeah, that always works. Well, it worked that time. Jan could have a way with guys when she wanted to. Jesse ended up riding the bull. When he got off, some guy in a hat and boots told him, "You look like you were holding a baby." He had conquered the bull. No point in doing that again. One night, Jesse was driving home from Trey's house. He was driving down the middle of the road with the top down and the doors off, standing up, screaming along to the Doors and Jim Morrison. That was when he found out that you could actually get a ticket for driving on the wrong side of the road. Another time, Jesse was driving Matthew to a ball game and looked up from adjusting the radio to see the fast approaching butt end of a city bus. Jesse impressed his brother with his driving prowess as he flew around the bus, off the road, thanking God that he didn't flip the Jeep. Toward the end of summer, Jesse went to see Jan in the hospital at night. He turned the wrong way as he left the hospital and ended up in the public housing projects. Had the doors off the Jeep again. All of a sudden, he looks out to see that all the people were outside, standing by the road, looking at him. The live version of Riding the Storm Out came on the radio. With the opening keyboard wail, he turned it up full blast. They were all like, "What the hell's that honky doing?" as Jesse pulled a big U-turn in the middle of the road. Jesse decided to go to Middle Tennessee in the fall. Gradually, the luster was wearing off his relationship with Jan. Once he had thought of marrying her, and later, Jan started talking about what it would be like when they were married. Jesse wrote a song about it. There was a time I wanted to marry her. There was a time she wanted to marry me. More and more all the time now we disagree. Some say love fades. Some say it burns away. Sometimes I wanna run out. Sometimes I wanna stay. Sometimes I wanna die. When I think how more and more I make her cry, I think how I never even try now. Yet I can't say goodbye. I'm living a lie now. Sometimes it's easier to hang on than to let go. I think of all the times I tried to go, and still it seems I never really tried though. Some say love fades. Some say it burns away. Sometimes I wanna run out. Sometimes I sit home and pout. There was a time I wanted to marry her. There was a time she wanted to marry me. More and more all the time now we disagree. I see the leaves die and fly away. Through the tears I cry, they look far away. I don't cry for me or her, but for the day. And I wish I was far away. Some say love fades. Some say it burns away. Sometimes I wanna run out. Sometimes I wanna shout. There was a time I wanted to marry her. There was a time she wanted to marry me. More and more all the time now we disagree. Jesse Dillon in August of his 18th year. One night he recorded that song. Actually, he recorded two songs that night. The first two songs he ever sang and recorded, he finished as the sun was coming up. Jesse and Jan were to walk to Breckenridge that day. She was very into walking at that point. It was about 5 miles, and it was hot that August day. Jesse played the song for her before they left. It was a crappy thing to do, and Jesse would feel guilty about it for a long time afterward. Why did he do it? Because he never thought how things would be taken by the other person. Jan wasn't stupid. They didn't talk much, and before long he was walking ahead of her. They were both tired. She started walking back. He followed her, but they still didn't talk. They didn't talk for days. When they did, it was cordial. It was over. The closest they came after that was a few letters. She started dating an older guy with a Trans Am. Jesse missed her and thought he was dumped for a better man, though he did know it was his fault. She soon broke up with the other guy, though. Seems like he wanted sex and she was not about to go there. Then he was ugly to her. Jan would have liked to get back together with Jesse, but she never had said, and besides, it was over between the two of them. And that was that for Jesse's first girlfriend. Roads. Take you down, take me down. Then we'll get up, take a look around, see what's coming down. Storming night fills the sky with light. The road ahead, black hole behind. Come with me and find the words you said, the thoughts you left behind still in your head. Men have bled for less, I confess. Men have bled and died for less than you. You're the most I'll ever find. Still, you're a short time. Maybe I'm a shaman, but it's your time. Still there to blame, and there's still time. Maybe it's just a game, and we should kill time. Lonely music will see us through, as the sky was once blue. Only roads will give us distance from cities of despair. Let's take the roads and chance, a chance to breathe the air. Jesse Dillon in August of his 18th year. Maybe what really started the breakup were Jesse's increasing thoughts about Rockland and about Carolyn, the blue-eyed girl with freckles and black hair, the girl with a bright face who had always just accepted him just as he was. Now he had a Jeep and people that liked him. He was feeling better about himself. Back in May, he had written her a letter, typed it at work. He had asked her if she knew of any place to camp and any place to party, like he had ever partied. It was all written really cool, something he would never be. But how would Carolyn have known? Carolyn wrote back that it would be great to see him. She was excited about graduating. She didn't know of a place to camp, but she could find them parties. It was on pink personalized stationery with Carolyn in big letters. Jesse had been so excited. Then reality hit. He was still skinny, and he still wasn't what he wanted to be. She was probably cool and popular and beautiful. He couldn't let her or anyone there see him like this. There were also problems with lack of money and lack of interest from his friends. In any event, the trip fell through. He didn't write her again. Carolyn's mother told Mrs. Flannery, who mentioned it to Jesse's mom. It was embarrassing, of course, but he hadn't written any of them, just the girl he hung with when he was 6. Part of me. I've seen you in the light of the sunrise, walking in the meadows by the sea. I've known the feelings in your blue eyes. I've known you because you're a part of me. It seems like all my life I've been lonely, for no matter who I found I could be happy only, just as long as you're around. I've held your hand as the sun went down, watching it sparkle in your eyes, crying together in the mountains under the twilight mountain skies. Anywhere you go, my love, I will go too. And when at last you die, my love, I will follow you. When the wind blows your black hair at night through coming change till our love will be. In the dark, your eyes shine bright. I've known you 'cause you're a part of me. I loved you when you were a child on the beach where you used to run. I've known the joy in your sweet smile. I've known you 'cause you and I are one. I've seen you watch the rainbow on the hill. I lie beside you and give you a kiss. In your eyes I see you know I will hold you till we go with the vanishing mist. I've seen you in the light of the sunrise, walking in the meadows by the sea. I've known the feelings in your blue eyes. I've known you 'cause you're a part of me. Jesse Dillon at 17.